Hey, this is Molly McCord, and I'm sharing with you some more teachings from my 12th book, The Truth Always Rises, and we're doing a deeper dive into some of the concepts that I share in this book. Now, this is part 2 of a video that's about the teachings from chapter 2, Deconditioning and Ego Deaths. Part 1 was about deconditioning, so this is part 2, which is all about ego deaths. And I will be honest with you and say that ego deaths can be very hard on a temporary basis. So let's look at what this means exactly. So first of all, the ego isn't bad, and it gets a bad rap. But why it gets a bad rap is because typically the ego is understood from the viewpoint of the unhealthy ego or the false self. But we have a healthy ego. Your healthy ego is your sense of confidence, motivation, your identity, how you feel about yourself in the world. It's the understanding that you have skills, you have abilities, you're here to contribute, to get things done, to be successful. These are all beautiful aspects of the ego. That's the healthy ego. But typically we come to understand the ego in the unhealthy definition, or also it's known as the false self, which is that part of us that's looking for control, that's looking to be powerful, that's perhaps excessive. It's the parts of us that perhaps can be really afraid of failure. We get competitive. Perhaps this is a part of you that you don't always like. It's the part of you that wants the last word. It's maybe angry. It's combative. It's the part of you that's too much, right? You come on too strong, or you're going overboard trying to prove something. The false ego, the false self, comes from that place. If I have to demonstrate my worth, I have to prove that I'm a good person, I have to prove my value. So that part of the ego, the unhealthy aspects of it, can get us into trouble. It can be that part of ourselves that we don't even like. It can be that part of yourself that you don't want to be. And so when we have ego deaths, what we're really experiencing is a loss of a part of ourselves that we aren't truly are at a deeper core level. And ego deaths are connected to who you believed yourself to be, typically based on early childhood or family programming. However, this can also pertain to societal programming, gender, culture, politics, spiritual beliefs, everything that composes that place of self-definition, that place of self-identity of, for example, I'm a good female in the world because I do this. I'm a good man in the world because I do this. Or I'm a good manager, or I'm a good Catholic, or I'm a good whatever. All of those sentences can have healthy ego definitions, right? You can finish those sentences in a very confident manner that are true for you. But with ego deaths, what happens is that the parts of yourself that aren't really you fall away. And it can be hard because all this time, or perhaps throughout your whole life, you believed yourself to be that aspect of you. You thought, well, this is who I am. And you put your identity in something that actually wasn't truly you. Now, this can show up as being shallow, materialistic, really focused on, your status in the world, what you've achieved, your resume. And sure, all of that stuff can matter and can be important. But was it out of balance? Did you put too much emphasis on those parts of your self-identity? Was it too much away? It's like the distance between who you are and who you believed yourself to be, that distance got so big that it isn't truly what you're all about or who you even want to be in the world. So ego deaths happen because typically of an external event where there is a loss, a crisis, a challenge, a struggle. And it can be life defining. It can be like, oh, I've worked so hard in this career and I've built all this up and I have this degree and I've had these positions and I have this job, and then it all falls apart, it all comes crashing down. That's an ego death. Or you put so much money into something and that became who you believed yourself to be. You're like, well, I own this house, I own this car, these are my possessions, this is who I am in the world. And that's not true. It's part of who you are, but it's not really who you are. So these ego deaths strip away what you thought was true for you. And what they're doing is asking you to return back to who you really are. It's a bit like sitting in an empty room. Nothing else is there. Empty room. Who are you in that empty room? How do you define yourself? Because that's really more of your healthy ego. We all have the unhealthy ego. In fact, we all have to find that place of maneuvering between proving something and containing and maintaining our energy. We all have that dance between, well, this is what I want and this is what I enjoy and this is what I want to own or buy, and status and accomplishment, and all of that is part of life. But the purpose of the ego death, and it has an important purpose, is to look at who you are at a core place, again, when you're sitting in that room all by yourself with nothing external defining you. And it brings you back to saying, well, this is who I really am at a core place in me. And these are the parts of myself that maybe were covered up or hidden, forgotten, lost along the way. Maybe they're the parts of you never knew, you never met. I've talked with clients who didn't understand that they were amazing artists and they just never had time to pursue that form of creativity. Or it's the part of you that you didn't feel safe to be in the world. And I've seen this a lot with men, where it's actually a really big deal right now for men who are experiencing these ego deaths or these losses of what they thought their identity was, because there's been very clear definitions of what it means to be masculine and what it means to be a man, and how you have to be strong, and what that looks like physically, what that looks like financially, economically, emotionally, mentally, right? It's been a very clear, I would say, very single definition of masculine strength. And I've actually talked with a number of clients lately who have been going through this loss of a job, this loss of a financial status or money or something that brought security and stability. And the grander purpose of it all is really to look at what was holding you back from really being more of your true self. So much of what we build and experience in life is really from intention. And when that intention is unconscious and automated, it's like being on autopilot, probably because of the early childhood or family programming, then at some point you kind of get into I'm going to say like a collision with that intention and the truth of who you are. Ego deaths are about eliminating those intentions that don't serve you, that you aren't really in the world, that you're not this person, you don't really want to continue on this path. You want something that's more you, that's more true to you, that represents who you are, and what happens is you're like, well, I don't know who that is, or I don't know what that is. And then that's when the work starts. That's when the work begins of figuring that out and getting those answers and understanding more of yourself. But the ego death typically happens first, and it takes away what you valued. It takes away the unconscious parts of yourself that you just accepted that were on autopilot. It takes away what you found valuable, where you found safety, where you found stability. But what it's also doing is it's returning you to your stronger sense of self. And I'm not going to lie, it's hard and it can suck. And it's okay to feel that way. It really is, because it's just part of what we go through at times. And often you don't have the answers right away. So the ego death is a time of huge trust, of just keep going day by day, maybe it's hour by hour, but it's understanding that it's really leading you back to who you really are. And then from there, it opens you up to even more of what you want and more of your truth and your values and your meaning. So it serves an incredible purpose. It's actually a very big time of transformation. It can be very private. People might not know about it, and that's fine. I think it's important to honor that. You don't have to tell the world, nothing, it doesn't have to be a Facebook post. But it's important to know the next steps, right? Like what's coming up, that you're meant to go somewhere with it. And that's also more about what I talk about in this book. And I also talk about the importance of sitting with your emotions. And I know that can sound funny, but we don't do that. We're not usually trained to do that. But it helps to move through all this when you're in touch with the truth of your feelings and you clear them out. You clear them out. So ego deaths are a big deal. And they're also ultimately a positive thing, although they don't feel that way at first at all. But they are meant to be returning you back to who you really are so that you can focus more on your healthy ego, your healthy sense of self, and everything else that isn't that falls away. So I hope this has been helpful for you, and I have more videos to share with you on teachings from this book, so be sure and check those out.